Hello and a warm welcome to everyone to Unacademy's YouTube channel. Let's crack UPSC CSE. Good afternoon to everyone who are watching live. So as you know, we are doing a crash course on ecology and environment for UPSC CSE Prelims 2020. So this is the continuations of this course. So we are discussing a topic by name aquatic biome today. So we will be dealing with aquatic biomes. So biomes as a land biomes etc. we have completed yesterday. So today we'll be discussing about aquatic biomes. This is about the topic for today. Then this is about me. I have 7 years of experience, more than 7 years of experience in teaching for civil services. I'm passionate about teaching. So let's start about today's session. Before starting today's session etc. Let me tell you something about the Unacademy application etc. Unacademy platform. So what you as you download the Unacademy platform from the app from the Google Store, from Play Store, or else in the app in the iPhone. So Unacademy learning app, as you download it etc., as you install it, what you will get is you can get access to all the top educator courses whichever are available etc. In fact, all the top educators whoever in the country, all are available at the Unacademy platform, and all their courses, not just remember, not one course, all the courses will be automatically available to you for those time period whichever you are buying it. So whether you talk about people like Ayush Shangi, Mronal Patel, Siddharth Arora sir, Deepika Reddy Megam madam, or Venkatesh Chaturvedi sir, all these people etc. These lectures will be awesome lectures will be already available to you. Then what you will get in the Unacademy app is there will be a session called special classes which are free for you, which are more or less an indicator to you how does Unacademy as an application works, how their interaction happens etc., everything etc., which you can understand the application. So there are so many special classes which are there etc., which will be ranging from discussions of current affairs analysis, or else discussing about art and culture, or a discussion about certain important topics. All these things will be there in the special classes etc. And apart from that, the easiest way to learn UPSC CSE online will be provided with Unacademy platform because of the flexibility it has. So you will get what you will get is you will get a flexibility schedule. The schedule is flexible because you can prepare according to your time frames. For example, if your strengths are not good in say in two subjects out of the 7 to 8 streams whichever you have, what you can do is every day 1 hour you can identify it. For example, two subjects like economy, environment, you are poor at it. What you can do, 1 hour economy class you can discuss in this course. Similarly, environment you can see my classes, right? So like that, or any other educators classes etc., economy environment classes. So for 2 hours a day, or rather 3 hours a day, whichever the sessions are, you can discuss your weak subjects, you can listen to the classes, and the remaining hours you can prepare of the remaining subjects you have. You can also practice MCQs of it. For example, polity, you are very good at it. If you have completed, then you can practice MCQs whichever available in the application in the Unacademy learning app etc. You can learn by MCQs. You can also learn by a structured course wherein which you are weaker. So that flexibility with the time and flexibility by a mode of subject will always be available to you. And you also have language of your choices, in multiple languages you'll be having, and you will get unlimited practice. Then feels like, and one of the advantages you'll have, it feels like you are right in the classroom. You can always chat with me, you can have interactive polls, you can learn anytime anywhere, no matter wherever you are etc. Unacademy plus course on your smartphone and laptop, you can always use it. and it is very much useful in the remote, for the remote areas etc., who cannot get access to the Delhi coaching institutes in the top metros of our country. At the same time, in the present corona crisis etc., you can stay at your home and you can prepare well, right? And coming to the subscription etc., you have multiple subscriptions etc., from 1 month to 24 months. I would suggest you to go for either 12 months or 24 months because of the per month cost, which will reduce drastically. It is just 2000 rupees per month for 24 months. So 24 into 2, 48,000, that will be your amount. So very what do you say, per month cost will be very cheaper. I would suggest you this 12 months or 24 months. Why? The reason is not that we get more money, it will be also useful for you, because for you UPSC preparation takes around 20 months. It's not just 1 or 2 months, right? Not just 1 or 2 months. For example, 12 months before the exam, say you're preparing for 2021, you have to start preparing from now. So one year before the exam and 10 months almost the process of exam itself. So that's this. I would suggest you to go for 24 months. And while you are doing it, etc., you can apply the special code which I am providing to you. This code VE10, as you use it, etc., you will get around 10% additional discount. So 48,000 will become 43,200 rupees, and 40,000 will become 36,000 rupees. So you can use this code VE10 and you can do it. Yes. This is about the platform. Before the platform, before this thing, etc., one thing which I would like to suggest you, in the present crisis of corona, where the entire country is locked down, students are severely affected, and for them Unacademy is starting around 20,000 free sessions. Yes, and for an UPSC aspirant, what advantages you have in this lockdown is, this kind of lockdown or self isolation, which is the key thing. Already UPSC aspirants are doing it, na? It is not like this is like a new thing for us, right? So many of the UPSC aspirants etc., who are preparing, until now what were they doing? They are away from the social things etc., they are away from so many things, and that's why they are doing. These aspirants are already away from it. As they are already away from it etc., they are already in self isolation mode. The only thing is, even the other people etc. have followed you. Just a minute. Yeah. Yes, sorry for the delay. As I'm saying, already we are in self isolation mode in the preparation process. What I would like to tell you is, use this opportunity of crisis. Use this crisis to turn into an opportunity. That is, convert the crisis into an opportunity. This is what I would like to tell you. You can sit at your home, evaluate yourself, where are you standing, and try to prepare. People who ever have not practiced the MCQs for preparation for 2020 preliminary exam, please do practice it etc. Then, yes, anyhow, this is what I would like to tell you. Before that, let's start the session. So as you know, we are discussing about biomes. So let's start with aquatic biomes. So aquatic ecosystems. So what do they refer to? They refer to the plant and the animal communities occurring in water bodies. So what are aquatic ecosystems? Any ecosystem which are of the plant and animal communities occurring in water bodies is called an aquatic ecosystem. These ecosystems are classified into two subgroups: freshwater ecosystems and rivers, lakes and ponds; marine ecosystems such as oceans, estuaries and mangroves. So you can divide in these aquatic ecosystems into rivers, lakes and ponds, which are a freshwater variety, and also into oceans, estuaries and mangroves, which are having some kind of marine ecosystems. So freshwater and marine. Then aquatic ecosystems are classified on the basis of salinity into the following types. So now once you can also divide the ecosystems into another basis, three types. Once again, freshwater ecosystems, which are having salt water less than low salt content, 5 parts per thousand. So water on land, freshwater ecosystem. This is water on land which is continuously cycling, which is continuously having a process called cycling, which is happening. That is, water is continuously in the process of cycling, and you have low salt content in it. That is known as freshwater. There are two types of freshwater. Once again, one is static, one is running water, static water, and running water. So static or still water, which you call lentic ecosystems, things like the ponds, lakes, bogs, swamps. Running water might be lotic ecosystems, which might be springs, mountain brooks, streams, and rivers. Then marine ecosystems, the water bodies containing salt concentration equal to or above the sea water, 35 parts per million or above, shallow seas and open ocean. We call them as marine ecosystems. Marine ecosystems are water bodies containing salt concentration equal to or above than that of sea water, 35 parts per thousand or above. So these are marine ecosystems. You can see the salinity of majority of the oceans. Salinity, it is always around 30 to 35 parts per 30,000 parts per thousand. So this will be the, what do you say, the symbol, right? So marine ecosystem. Brackish ecosystems are ecosystems where the salt is between 5 to 35. So please remember, 5 to 35 brackish, less than 5 freshwater, more than 35 or almost equal to 35, it is marine. In between, brackish. So it is division based on extent of salt content. Anyhow, we will discuss about how the factors are available here. Some of the important factors which you have here is sunlight and oxygen are the major factors affecting the productivity. Sunlight and oxygen. So in the land biomes, as you have discussed, what is the criteria? The criteria always revolved around temperature and rainfall. We have seen that land biomes, the criteria are significantly revolved around, though vegetation etc. also matters, they are all a product of these two. So entire criteria of biomes have revolved around temperature and rainfall. Similarly, aquatic ecosystems, aquatic biomes will revolve around sunlight and oxygen. So how sunlight happens etc., how does it have an impact is, sunlight will determine how much penetration can happen, because as depth increases, that is, as you are going into the interiors of the water from the surface, penetration will decrease, right? As penetration decreases, there is a photic zone and there is an aphotic zone. A photic zone is an upper layer of ecosystem where there is light and where photosynthetic activity is confined. Aphotic zone, there will be light which is very less and very low for photosynthesis, which they cannot carry out. So photic zone etc. is where life is more available, and aphotic zone is one where life is less available. If you can see in this diagram as I am drawing here, if this is a water body, for example, if this is the land and this is the surface of the oceanic water, what you can find is more or less sunlight will be available until here. This is called photic zone, and more or less life also will exist only here. Why? Because no photosynthesis life cannot exist in the other areas, of course, at least significantly, not 100% but significantly. So this is aphotic. So this is what it is. So one of the criteria is sunlight. Anything which harmfully affects sunlight will not have it. So how does it have an impact? As we discussed about coral reefs, one of the ecosystem called corals, you will understand this phenomena very significantly. Then another important factor is dissolved oxygen, DO content. We call it as DO. See, you see, normally if there is a water body very near to us, and if you wanted to check the quality of water in a water body, usually what do people suggest is check DO content of the water. DO content is one of the indicator of water. In fresh water, concentrations of this. So what is dissolved oxygen? In fresh water, concentration of dissolved oxygen is 150 times lower relatively when compared with same unit of air. So when compared with the same unit of air, the freshwater concentration of dissolved oxygen is 150 times lower. Then it enters through air-water interface. Then other factors, transparency, etc. So how does the oxygen enters into the water body? It enters to the air-water interface. At the same time, the amount of oxygen, dissolved oxygen which is there is lower relatively when compared with the air. So extent of oxygen is always lesser. So oxygen is a very critical factor in terms of survival of the ecosystem or in a water body. So usually etc. whenever oxygen content as a whole will reduce, that is dissolved oxygen content will reduce, it is an indicator that ecosystem is degrading. How does it decrease? Yes, think. Pause for a while and think. So it might reduce because of oil crisis, that is oil spill. Right? So it can have in as many different way. Anyhow, etc. is one. Oil spill is one of the indicator. There is another thing called eutrophication. We will discuss that as part of water pollution. As of now, try to understand this level. So there is another thing called eutrophication. Yes. Then what other factors which also will have an impact on it? Things like transparency. If the water is not transparent, say for example, there is more sedimentation. What is that? More sedimentation, that is deposits of sand, whatever the things are, and there is more sentence, light penetration is difficult, then also that ecosystem will be having an effect. Similarly, temperature, the water temperature is generally are increasing, that is also a bad indicator. See, temperature, what happens with is the specific heat of land and water are very much different. Specific heat of water, it requires 3 times the energy of the land to increase the temperature by 1 degree centigrade. What is specific heat? Amount of temperature needed to increase 1 degree to increase by 1 degree centigrade of a certain molecule, right? Of a certain object, right? So here the specific heat of water, how much energy do you require to increase the temperature of water by 1 degree centigrade? The amount of energy which the land requires, that is the specific heat of land, is equal to 3 times of the water specific heat is equal to 3 times of the land. So rapid heating is an objective of land. When you compare with water and land, rapid heating you find it in land, and you find rapid slow heating in water. Similarly, slow heating, slow cooling. Because water will not have the daily range of temperature or the annual range of temperature very high, more or less temperature in water body more or less will remain the same. What actually happens is the plants and animals whichever are surviving here, they are having less tolerance to change in temperature. So what is tolerance? To what extent an ecosystem can survive in a certain temperature is what you call tolerance. So tolerance means here, that is what the tolerance. Tolerance here means ability of the species in aquatic ecosystem, the plants and animals. To what extent that ability is there of survival of change in temperature is called tolerance. It is a This is what tolerance here is, and this tolerance, if its tolerance is high, it means they are subjected to more change in temperature. If the tolerance is less, they are subjected to less change in temperature. So this is why this tolerance is lesser, because the water temperatures are more or less same throughout the year. It is not as changing as you might, as significantly as you see in a water in a land ecosystem. So that's where the adaptability of species is also very less. So this is about the criteria which you study. I hope these points are very clear. These are very important for you. They might ask you in the exam. So let's start with coral reefs. Before starting coral reefs, etc., any ecosystem, you can divide that ecosystem services. Divide the ecosystem services into these four: provisioning services, regulating services, and cultural services. So product obtains from ecosystems: energy, seafood, biomedical, transportation, national defense. Whatever the provision, product obtained from ecosystems, that is, what do they provide us? Regulating services, benefits obtained from regulation of ecosystem. What are they doing? Cultural services, non-material benefits obtained from ecosystem. Supporting services, services necessary for the production of all other ecosystem services. You can divide any ecosystem services into these four. So what is the significance of mangroves? You can divide this four. What is the significance of coral reefs? You can divide into these four. So while we discuss, I will try to tell you that. So similarly, what is the significance of any biome? You can write about into these four options, etc. Any ecosystem will do all these things. Yes, before that, etc. Let's start one. What do you say? With one of the aquatic biome, coral reefs, as you can see in the picture. So this is what the coral reefs are, which you find in the very near to a water body, etc. So many awesome beautiful pictures which can be seen in the internet. Coral reefs. Yes, this is one of the coral reef, etc., where people went into it by scuba diving. Yes. So what are coral reefs? What are coral reefs? Coral reefs are large underwater structures composed of the skeletons of colonial marine invertebrates, which are called corals. Corals are large underwater structures. Then what do these corals do? These coral species that build reefs are known as hard corals because they extract calcium carbonate from seawater to create a hard, durable exoskeleton that protects their soft sac-like bodies. Each individual coral is referred to as polyp. Each individual coral is referred to as polyp. So what are coral reefs? Coral reefs are large underwater structures composed of the skeletons of marine invertebrates. These coral reefs are reefs which are building by extraction of calcium carbonate from the sea water. Yes. Then how do these corals survive? Is corals live in a symbiotic relationship with an algae by name zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae algae live with the coral polyps, which are excretions of calcium carbonate structures which are found, etc., which they are living. And this and both corals and calcium carbonate, not CO2, calcium carbonate, CaCO3. So assist the corals in nutrient production through its photosynthetic activities. So what is happening? What is symbiosis? Symbiosis is mutualism. So in the interaction of mutualism, what did we discuss? There will be two species, species A, species B. Both will be interacting with each other and both are dependent on each other. Say example, The corals gives the algae a home. The corals, they give the algae a home. In return, the algae provides the coral with food. The coral gives the algae a home. So whatever the corals which you are surviving here, so you can see in this photograph. So these colors whichever you are finding, those are algae, right? And these skeleton-like structures, the finger-like structures which you are finding it, all those things are corals. Corals are basically white in nature. White. This white color corals, what are they providing is, for the algae they are providing the home, and the algae is providing the food to the corals. You see here. In return, the algae provides the coral with the food, and the coral is providing a algae a home. So in this kind of symbiosis, etc., whichever way they are surviving, we call them as coral reefs. Yes, this is what you need to remember. Then, what do these coral reefs need to survive for? Is before discussing the what do coral reefs need to survive, let me explain this. You can see here this photo. All the corals here are white in color. So when there is no algae, corals are in this fashion. They cannot prepare on their own food. They can't prepare food on their own. So they are extremely dependent on corals. So when these corals, when the corals come back, the color is also you are getting it back, and the beautiful pictures whichever you are finding, of course, that is an aesthetic purpose. That is you leave about that. But the ecosystem survival is extremely dependent upon the how corals are algae is entering into the corals. So corals provide the home and algae provides the much needed food for corals. Yes, this is what which I would like to tell you. Then what do coral reefs need to survive? They require so many ideal climatic conditions. So what are these things? So many ideal climatic conditions. Ideal climatic conditions. So what do they need? One of the ideal climatic condition which they need is sunlight. Yes, as you discussed right now, what are the critical factors? I told you, sunlight and oxygen. So one of the critical factor which they require is sunlight. So why do sunlight? Corals need to grow in shallow water where sunlight can reach them. So if you find all the corals, usually if this is how an ocean surface looks like, this is surface and this is seabed. So usually in the areas which are nearer to the system, so usually in the this part of the world, you find corals. So you will not find at the bottom deep sea oceans. You usually find at the nearer to the surface. Corals are found only nearer to the surface in the shallow water, which you call it something like as continental shelf. So in the continental shelf, you find the corals. So corals depend on zooxanthellae that grow inside of them for oxygen and other things. And since these algae need sunlight to survive, corals also need sunlight to survive. Corals rarely develop in water deeper than 50 meters. So usually, as the depth increases, corals can't be found. Rarely, that's what they say. What did they say? Rarely. So majority, that means what? Majority they develop when the depth is not more than 50 meters. And some, see, recently I went to a place in Kenya, Mombasa, Kenya. I went to scuba diving. So I have done around 15 meters depth. I have done scuba diving. But usually I also met there one of a person by name who is a National Geographic Channel photographer. So he is saying that he went to different places across the globe and his maximum depth which he has done is 70 meters. How much? 70 meters. So he has done at around 70 meters. Whereas etc. the person usually we are saying corals rarely develop in deeper than 50 meters. So you can find even around 70 meters also. Sometimes you can find some kind of what do you say corals, but usually they're always nearer to the land areas towards to the surface of the ocean, where in which sunlight can pass through. Why? Without sunlight photosynthesis can't be done. So what are the ideal climatic conditions? One of the ideal climatic condition is sunlight. Why do they require sunlight? For photosynthesis. As the depth increases, photosynthesis activity cannot be done. That is the reason why they require sunlight. That is why only the depth until around 50 meters, for example, you can find corals. Then clear water. Another important thing which they require is clear water. What is clear water? Corals need clear water that lets sunlight through. So if there is no clearness, that is there is opaqueness, what happens is sunlight cannot penetrate. If this is the water body, if the sunlight cannot penetrate, what happens is sunlight cannot penetrate here. What happens? This part will not get the sunlight. So they don't thrive in areas where there is no clear water. Sediments and plankton can cloud water, which decreases the amount of sunlight that reaches the zooxanthellae algae. So this is what I'm trying to say. Why do they require clear water? So that sunlight can pass it through. Then they also require another thing, something called warm water temperature. Most of the corals are in tropical areas only. You will not find much corals in temperate regions. Tropical regions only. Warm water temperature. Reef building corals require warm water conditions to survive. Different corals living in different regions can withstand various temperature fluctuations, but more or less they require live in water temperatures of 20 to 32 degrees centigrade only. See, you can say 20 to 32 degrees centigrade is very less. No. 20 to 32 degrees centigrade is in a water body. As it is a water body, etc., what happens is usually here is so 20 to 30 degrees centigrade. As it is a water body, usually you will find that temperature will not be as high. That's why 20 to 30 degrees centigrade is warmness itself for a tropical ecosystem. So here for corals, 20 to 30 degrees centigrade is a rough temperature which they need to survive. Then last thing we have discussed clear water. Now we are discussing clean water. More or less both are there are so many similarities with these words, clean and clear water. Corals are sensitive to pollution and sediments. If there is more pollution, if there is more sediments, what happens? Opaqueness will increase. That is, clearness will reduce. So clean water is clear water. So that in that perspective you can understand more or less both clean and clear water are one and the same. Sediments can create cloudy water and be deposited on corals, blocking out the sun and harming the polyps. Wastewater discharged into the ocean near the reef can contain too many nutrients that cause seaweeds to overgrow the reef. So wastewater discharged into the ocean near the reef can contain too many nutrients. So that is, pollution can increase. As the pollution can increase, seaweeds can grow, and these seaweeds will block the sunlight going into the corals. So either way, whatever the things is, ultimately that impact is only through sunlight. But that impact through sunlight is varying because of different reasons. So wastewater, wherever wastewater is there, if it has so many nutrients, it causes seaweeds to overgrow, because of which there is less penetration and hence less sunlight. So even seaweeds are also not a good thing to grow. Similarly, salt, another ideal climatic condition. So many ideal climatic conditions. Yes, another thing, they require clean and clear water. That should not be much amount of pollution and all, but definitely they require the decent salt water ratio. Corals need salt water to survive and requires a certain balance in the ratio of salt to water. That is, they cannot survive in fresh waters like estuaries. So where rivers drain fresh water into the ocean, estuaries, etc. That is the reason why all the east coast of India, all the coastal regions of India primarily, particularly in the east coast of India, where you find big rivers of Ganga, Brahmaputra river system, which they merge in Bangladesh. Similarly, you have Godavari, you have Mahanadi, you have Krishna. All these rivers, whichever discharge their water into Bay of Bengal, they bring so much amount of fresh water. That is the reason why corals don't survive there. Why? They don't need salt water. They need salt water, a certain amount of salt water to what salt to water ratio, not around pure fresh water. They require clean and clear water which is free from pollution. But whatever the water is there, they require a certain amount of salt content so that they can survive. So salt water, clean and clear water, and decent amount of temperature is the ideal climatic conditions. Clear water, clean water, both are roughly one and the same, where there should not be much pollution so that sunlight can penetrate. Another criteria, temperature. Temperature, the minimum amount of temperature is required. Then another thing, etc. This is a coastal ecosystem, marine ecosystem, they require a certain salt water ratio. So usually they are not found where fresh waters discharge huge amount of or rivers discharge huge amount of fresh water. So this is what corals need to survive. They can frame a question on these criteria. Please do try to understand as much as possible from the option. Then next, distribution. Where do you find corals in our country? Yes, where do you find? Usually you find in these four areas. Primarily these four areas: Andaman and Nicobar Islands, as you can see in the map here. Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Then you can find in Lakshadweep, Gulf of Mannar and Park Bay. Lakshadweep, Gulf of Mannar and Park Bay. So the areas between India and Sri Lanka, you can find corals. Then Gulf of Kutch. So this is Gulf of Kutch. See, this is Gulf of Kutch, not this. So not the area between say Mumbai and Gujarat, right? Not this one, but definitely around this one, Gulf of Kutch. Where is Kutch Peninsula? Ran of Kutch. Ran of Kutch. Ran of Kutch is the westernmost point, westernmost point, and that's where we have to identify from that perspective. So western points. This is Kutch, Ran of Kutch area. So this part. So Gulf of Kutch is this. So you find in this, these are the four areas, four significant areas. So why don't you find around this entire coastline here? Because there are so many rivers. So you have Godavari river, you have Mahanadi river, you have Ganga river which comes in this fashion here, and you have Brahmaputra river which merge and form a Ganga delta here. Similarly, Mahanadi delta, so many other local rivers, Krishna here, Kaveri here, right? All these rivers bring so much amount of fresh water, so no not much amount of saltness in this part. And this is, see, as the depth as you move away, the depth increases, so salt, they cannot survive on a open water, right? So they require a decent amount of, what do you say, sunlight which can penetrate through. So usually they are found in the continental shelf areas, and as they move into the open ocean, shelf areas will be lesser, and here there is more fresh water. That is the reason why corals are not found in this part. But the thing is, there are two islands which also you find. So two islands called Netrani Island in Karnataka and Malvan Island in Maharashtra, Malvan region in Maharashtra, which is nearer to Ratnagiri forests. Ratnagiri forest. So the westernmost point, or else southwest point. So Maharashtra, where do they end? Near to Goa. So that part, Ratnagiri, Malvan region in Maharashtra, you also find some amount of corals. So Netrani and Malvan Islands, that is also one distribution which you can find. So this is what the areas which you find in India. I hope this point is clearer. Please do identify the places, etc. If they ask you, Malvan is a place which is known for coral reefs. Netrani Island, which is a name famous for coral reefs. Where are they located? Karnataka, Maharashtra. Netrani for Karnataka, Malvan for Maharashtra. You have to remember those places. Then distribution in the world. So now you have discussed about India, distribution about the world. More or less you can see the map here. Entirely significantly it is tropical part. So where is now? Whenever you are trying to understand a world map, please try to understand where are the important latitudes. Where is equator? This is equator. You can see some very less land is available in the southern hemisphere. So this is southern hemisphere, less land, more land in the northern hemisphere. And this is Tropic of Cancer. So even a bit low, Tropic of Cancer. You can see majority it is in the tropical areas. Tropical areas, not temperate regions. So a homework for you, every one of you, whoever are watching, check countries located on Tropic of Cancer. And this Tropic of Cancer passes through India. Identify the states which passes through and identify the cities which it is nearer to it. Similarly, Tropic of Capricorn. Similarly, as India Tropic of Cancer passes through, only identify the states within India, otherwise identify the countries. Similarly, equator. You will understand the distribution of the world, land water distribution in the world. So map understanding much more better if you understand. Please don't identify the tiny, you need not remember all the tiny countries which are located in it. But if you understand that these are all the countries, where are they, you can identify which places are located at which latitude, more or less roughly you will try to understand. Otherwise, what happens is, say for example, South Africa, one of the southernmost region of the southern hemisphere, South Africa, you might feel that South Africa is a cooler region. But it is not as cool as you find in Norway. The climate of temperature of Norway and South Africa, which are more or less the extremes in terms of land of north and south, but South Africa is not, perhaps because it is nearest to subtropic of Cancer, whereas Norway is around 60 degrees and South Africa is around 30-40 degrees. So much amount of variation. These things you will be avoiding. So you find more distribution about here. Anyhow, coming to mangroves, coral reefs here. Mostly they are found in tropical areas. Some of the names, etc., you need to identify. Yes, one of the biggest region, if you can remember this, Australia. This is what you call Great Barrier Reef. Great Barrier Reef in Australia. So from this point, so this part, the eastern side of Australia is Great Barrier Reef, one of the biggest coral reef of the world. Then as you move from that, you can find Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, all the Pacific Islands, Indonesia, Philippines, one of the important place. Then Maldives, Mauritius and Mauritius. Then few places near on Madagascar. Then Kenya, Tanzania. Some places, some areas around here, around the, what do you say, West Asian region, you are finding, and some of the places even in the Caribbean islands. The Caribbean region, this is the Caribbean region is about red color. This one This is Caribbean region. You can identify the places. So what are the places? Australia, Great Barrier Reef, Maldives, Mauritius, one of the prominent tourism centers of coral reefs, Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. So all the areas around in the Western Asia. Then similarly in the Africa, etc., you find places like Kenya, Tanzania, and Madagascar. Then in the Caribbean islands, etc., you find significant coral reefs. You see Amazon forest, near it where Amazon river water is flourishing, you will not find much corals. That's where the density of the red color which you have seen in the map is very much reduced. I hope this point is clear. Distribution. Next, come to the next point. So we will briefly understanding about threats to corals. Threats to corals. So what did you understand until now? What are coral ecosystems? Where do they survive? Before understanding where do they survive, we have studied what do they require. That is ideal climatic conditions. Then you have studied where do they distribution, location and distribution. Now we will be discussing about what are the threats, what causes is because of the threat there is something called a topic by name coral bleaching. We will discuss about that, what solutions and what will be the consequences of that and what solutions. So this will be discussing now. So the United Nations, it has reported that. So what did United Nations has reported? 70% of the Earth's coral reefs are threatened. 70% of the Earth's coral reefs are threatened. 20% have been destroyed with no hope for recovery. It has reported that United Nations in its report, it has found out the following. 70% of the Earth's coral reefs are threatened. 20% have been destroyed for no hope for recovery. 24% are under imminent risk of collapse. An additional 26% are at risk due to longer term threats. Yes, this is what the United Nations report. Yes, before that, etc., just understand what you mean by coral bleaching. So coral bleaching is turning of the color of the coral bleaching into white, corals into white is called coral bleaching. That's it. White corals are an indicator that coral bleaching has occurred. That is changing of the color. So you can see what is coral bleaching. Have you ever wondered how a coral is bleached? How a coral becomes bleached? See, first one, healthy coral. You can see 1, 2, 3 here. See the first one. Healthy coral 1. See what you are finding, etc. Corals have a symbiotic relationship with microscopic algae called zooxanthellae and that live in the tissues. These algae are, just I'll try to zoom in. See, corals form a symbiotic relationship with microscopic algae called zooxanthellae that live in the tissues. These algae are corals' primary food source and give them their color. Yes, that's what we have discussed in the symbiotic. This is what the first stage. So normal coral. Then stressed coral is what? If the stressed algae, if stressed algae leaves the coral. Why does it stress? You can see in the point. When the symbiotic relationship becomes stressed due to increased ocean temperature or pollution, the algae leaves the coral tissue. When the symbiotic relationship becomes stressed due to increased ocean temperature or pollution. So whatever the ideal climatic conditions whichever you have discussed. So the ideal climatic conditions whichever I have discussed. You see those ideal climatic conditions. Any ideal climatic condition is not available, the coral will be slowly starting stressing. And if the stress continues, what is bleached coral? Coral is left bleached and vulnerable. Without the algae, the coral loses its major source of food, that is turns white or very pale, and it is more susceptible to disease. Because of this, corals turning white. So what is that? A healthy coral is normal coral which you have seen. Slowly as the algae starts moving away because of some kind of pollution or some kind of form, temperature changes, whatever it is, we call it as stressed coral. So as you can see in the second photograph, the extent of coral is slowly diminishing and they are moving away. And the third one, you can see the completely algae has moved away, which you call bleached coral. This is what coral bleaching is. What is coral bleaching? Turning into the corals turning into white color is called coral bleaching. What causes coral bleaching? First significant thing, need not study the conditions whichever I have provided here. Go back to ideal climatic conditions. Any changes in the ideal climatic conditions is causes coral bleaching. Simple. Whatever the ideal climatic conditions you have discussed, you create alternative conditions without studying this chapter as of now. Just simply pause this video right now, go back to the previous session, try to see from there what causes conditions, and you yourself think about what will be the opposite of all those four conditions. Those opposite are the reasons for coral bleaching. Yes, now you can see. See, first one, change in ocean temperature. There I have discussed that warm water temperature is required. And what are you finding? There is a change in the ocean temperature because there is significantly we are having something called climate change, which is causing leading cause of coral bleaching. Have you ever heard of global warming? Have you ever heard of El Nino? El Nino has caused so much amount of destruction of the Great Barrier Reef of Australia in 2016. The significant coral bleaching has occurred in Australia because of El Nino. Why? Because El Nino temperature, warm water temperature, the temperature of surface water is increasing and the ocean temperature is increasing in the eastern region of the eastern coast of the western coast of the Pacific Ocean and the eastern coastline of Australia, because of which El Nino is found and it is causing significant causing. Then similar second one, runoff and pollution. You said, I told you there, clean and clear water. Now there is more runoff and more polluted water. What happens? Storm generated precipitation can rapidly dilute ocean water and runoff can carry pollutant. These can bleach near coral shore corals. So wherever corals are there, runoff and pollution, they can bring more sediments and more dust, thereby less cleanness, more opaqueness. More opaqueness means less sunlight. Then overexposure to sunlight. Sometimes these are the two. See, climate change and pollution are the primary causes. Other causes which are also help is overexposure to sunlight. When temperatures are high, high solar irradiance contributes to bleaching in shallow coral waters. Then extreme low tides. Exposure to the air during extreme low tides can cause bleaching in shallow corals. What happens? If the tides are extreme, what usually happens is there is more sunlight, etc., and there is more exposure to the air, and corals try to go deeper, because of which they leave it. So in the low tide, which is a continuation, there is also a problem. So this is what coral bleaching is. So what is coral bleaching? Just once again, I have understood right now. I have told you, I think hope you have understood, but just once again we will be continuing by words. Let us see. When corals face stress by changes in conditions such as temperature, light or nutrients. So whatever the changes in the ideal climatic condition by light, nutrients or temperature, what do they find? They expel the symbiotic algae zooxanthellae living in their tissues, causing them to turn completely white. This white color phenomenon is called coral bleaching. That's what we have discussed. The pale white color is of tissues of calcium carbonate which are visible due to loss of pigment producing zooxanthellae. The pigment which is producing by zooxanthellae, that is lost, because of which calcium carbonate tissues are visible. Corals can recover, and if this stress is for short term, that is not severe, and it is short term, corals can recover. So if it is short term, short term, that is in the stage 2 itself, coral bleaching is not severe, they can recover. Why? Algae can come back. But if the coral bleaching continues for longer run, usually more in months, then definitely corals cannot recover, and thereby there will be complete destruction, which we call as coral bleaching. That is, coral bleaching for a short term also can be recovered, but coral bleaching in the long term cannot be recovered, and thereby there is death of corals. So where do you find coral bleaching has occurred? It has occurred in Caribbean, Indian and Pacific oceans on a regular basis, that is more or less across the world. Then what are the causes of coral bleaching? Once again I will be discussing the same thing. First thing, rise in sea temperature. El Nino elevates the sea temperature and destroys coral reefs. I have discussed the example right now. Then ocean acidification. Due to rise in carbon dioxide levels, oceans absorb more carbon dioxide. This increases the acidity of the ocean water and inhibits the coral's ability to create calcareous skeletons, which is essential for their survival. Due to rise in carbon dioxide levels, ocean absorb more carbon dioxide. This increases the acidity of ocean water and inhibits the coral ability to create skeletons, which is essential for their certification. So, whenever carbon dioxide levels rises, etc., oceans absorb more. This increases acidity. That's what you need to remember. Yes, this is one reason. Then another thing, solar radiation, we have just discussed right now. Whenever there is some kind of more ultraviolet radiation, etc., or whenever there is some kind of changes in the tropical weathers where there are less clouds, more sunlight, more radiation, coral bleaching also can. Why? Because temperature might be increasing. Then another thing, another reason could be around infectious diseases. So some of the bacterium like Vibrio inhibits photosynthesis of zooxanthellae. These bacteria become more potent with elevated sea temperatures. Chemical pollution. Then increases nutrient concentrations, affects corals by promoting phytoplankton growth, which in turn supports increased number of organisms that compete with coral for space. So pollution, etc., one thing. Increased sedimentation. Both are reasons are impact will be one and the same, but the way they cause might be varying. So sedimentation, etc., what happens, or chemical pollution, etc. So in chemical pollution, what is happening? There is more nutrients, etc. There will be more seaweeds, less space for corals. Similarly, sedimentation, because there is more amount of land clearing and coastal construction, where there is more erosion from land, where there is sudden huge rainfall, there will be more runoff, and the runoff will bring more amount of dust, sand, pollutants, sediments, everything. There will be small silt particles on the surface. The silt particles will act as opaque to the sunlight, wherein which, etc., less sunlight available to the corals, and that will cause some kind of causes. So smaller corals and particles settle out, reducing light availability and potentially reducing coral photosynthesis. Sedimentation, pollution, that's what it is. Then other reasons which also impact by humans are overfishing. What is overfishing? There is so much amount of well developed food chain which is developed in the corals. Corals are regarded as tropical rainforest of the world because of the amount of diversity of species which you find, and this food chain is disturbed if you do overfishing. So that is one reason which is also happening. Then pollution from agriculture or an industrial runoff, which increases sedimentation. So there is a natural reason for sedimentation, there is also a man-made reason for sedimentation. Similarly, coral mining. Similarly, development of industrial areas near coral ecosystems also adversely impact corals. Another important thing which we did not discuss here, human-induced threat. Tourism and more plastic pollution. Tourism, more plastic pollution, that also will increase opaqueness So there is no clear water. See, ultimately, whatever the threats causes which we are discussing, understand how ideal climatic conditions are disturbed. That ideal climatic conditions, if they are disturbed for corals, that is what causes coral bleaching is. Then you can go through the next point, consequences. What consequences do you find because of this? The consequences could be changes in the coral communities can affect the species that rely on live coral for food and shelter. So what happens because of consequences? Changes in coral communities can affect the species that rely on live coral for food and shelter. So there are so much amount of food diversity which I have discussed right now. This diversity is affecting. There will be few species which will be located in the corals, which they survive on the corals, that will be having a harmful effect, because of which marine animals can be lost and this food chain can be disturbed. Then another thing, because the diversity of species will decrease, there is also a decline in species and genetic and species diversity. Just a minute. Yes, genetic and species diversity may occur and coral die as a result of bleaching. Because the genetic and the species diversity will reduce, that is the variety of species and the variety of within one species, the variety of genetics which are available will reduce. What also happens is ecologically, see only ecologically I am talking about, if there is lesser genetic diversity, there is lesser tolerance to diseases. If there are more genes, different genes, what happens is the tolerance to diseases will increase in general. Similarly here also, etc. Because genetic and species diversity is reduced, the diseases also will increase. And they can discourage tourism, which can affect the local economy. As we discussed, tourism is a very significant factor. So many local people are surviving. For example, Maldives, it's a tourist country. Imagine that people who are dependent on tourism, whether it is hotels, 5-star hotels, 3-star hotels, etc., whether it is the restaurants, pubs, whether it is the cab aggregators, and the online platforms like Ola, Uber, and also Go Ibibo, Make My Trip, all these things, etc. All these are tourism based things. All these things will be significantly affected. Then, coral bleaching can cause even shifts in fish communities, which and these fish communities, shifts in fish community, food chain is disturbed. It will cause economical loss first as it impacts the food supply for the country. Food supply is impacted and associated economic activities. And people living near the coast are now vulnerable to increased storm damage, erosion. People living the coast, see now you have corals. What do they do? As the water is moving, and imagine this is how you are having land, and as water is moving, if there are corals here, what is it? If the water is moving with rapid speed, what they can do is they can stop the speed, or they can reduce it also, corals. But now what happens? Because people living near the coast are vulnerable to storm damage, erosion, and flooding, there is so much amount of significance. Yes, this is what you need to understand. See, I hope these consequences are clearer. Before that, let's go to the first point which I told you, ecosystem services. I think you can see this in the, what is the significance of corals? You can go through them. What is the significance of coral ecosystem? Corals are very significant for regulating services like, see what corals have a role to play in ecology, ecological services. That's what you call regulating services. So these regulating services, they provide from the regulation of ecosystem. So do they help in flood prevention? Yes. Do they help in erosion control? Yes. Do they control pests and pathogens? Yes. Do they reduce climate regulation? Yes. So everything etc. they do. Photosynthesis, they are part of ecological things. Do they provide food? So here come to provisioning services. Do they provide food? Do they provide medical? Yes. Do they provide some kind of transportation here? Not necessarily, but do they provide economy? Yes, definitely. Tourism. So this is provisioning something like economic services. Similarly, cultural, aesthetic purpose, recreational. Some people go into the scuba diving because for educational purpose. Some do it for recreational purpose. So that way culturally, not every point whichever mentioned can be applied on corals, but you can divide the reasons into this many. Similarly, supporting services. Do they provide biological diversity? Yes. Just now I discussed. They are called as tropical rainforests. Are they part of nutrient recycling? Yes. Are they product source for primary productivity? Yes. So you can divide it into economic, ecological, and cultural services also. And these economic ecological services are threatened because of coral bleaching. That is what we are discussing until now. Then what are the steps to reduce? Once again please try to always try to correlate. So now, what causes coral bleaching? What are the ideal climatic conditions? What are the ideal climatic conditions are there? If these climatic conditions, that is things like warm temperature, all these things are disturbed, coral bleaching is occurring, right? So what are the causes for coral bleaching? I have given the points. All these points are nothing but climatic conditions changes. Now what will be the consequences we have discussed? Now what are the solutions? Solutions. Once again, don't study from the notes. You think once again. Whatever the causes, try to prevent the cause. Solutions will come automatically. So some causes, take one cause. What solution can you bring to that cause? What solution can you bring to a second cause? What solution can you bring to third cause? So this is what is called correlation and interlinkages. As you interlinkate all these things, automatically solutions will be long term and sustainable in nature. So don't study causes at one way, solutions at another way. While I discussed causes of coral bleaching, I interlinked with climatic conditions, that the ideal climatic conditions. Similarly, why I am discussing causes, now I will discuss with solutions from the causes itself. So I will not go to this 10 ways to protect first, then I will go to the causes itself. Yes. What are the causes? So rise in sea temperature. Now what will be the solution? Any global warming reducing step. Any global warming reducing step. For example, checking electricity, making it sure that Paris agreement is in successful. There is a global agreement of Paris, right? Paris agreement. We will discuss as part of climate change. So any agreement which is trying to have significant adaptation and mitigation of climate change, all those things are the solutions for coral bleaching, solutions for corals also. So how can you protect corals? Take steps to prevent climate change and global warming. All those steps, whichever you take, is it reduces rise in sea temperature, and that will cause less coral bleaching. So the idea is prevention of coral bleaching, and the idea is also about mitigation of coral bleaching. Right, rise in sea temperature. Similarly, rise in ocean acidification, you can reduce it. Similarly, solar irradiation, can you reduce much? Not much. Infectious diseases, yes. Can you reduce infectious diseases? Yes, you can identify. Similarly, can you identify certain hard using with the use of technology? Can you identify hard tolerant species? What do you say? Adaptable species, hard corals which are adaptable towards high temperature. Can you do it? using technology, biotechnology and all, genetic technology and all these things, you might think about it. This is the extreme solution, you can think about that. Similarly, chemical pollution, increase sedimentation, make it sure that there are less energy whichever are there. There is less kind of activities which are there in kinds of these areas. Automatically, these chemical pollution increase sedimentation which is occurring around the coral reefs. That will reduce. Then human induced threats, overfishing. Try to make sustainable fishing practices. Then pollution from agriculture and industrial runoff. Have some kind of a buffer zones between coastal ecosystems and land bodies, so that this buffer zone like sand etc. will reduce the extent of pollution which is reaching the water. So ultimately, what is the source of pollution in a land, in a water, in an ocean? It is land. So how do land pollution is converting into water pollution? There should be a buffer zone between land and water, like mangroves or like some kind of structures, where in which filtered water can enter into, less industrial waste can enter into it. If not, if you are unable to do it, straight away stop industrial activity and agriculture activity around coral reefs. That is one method. Yes, that's what the solutions are. Now you see the solutions, you will see 10 ways to protect coral reefs. Yes, go through them. Yes, let's see. As you can see, 10 ways to protect coral reefs. See, corals are already a gift, don't give them as presents. Some kind of thing. What they are saying is, it takes corals decades or longer to create reef structures or leave them to the reef. Energy efficient light bulbs reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Climate change is one of the leading threats to coral reef survival. So climate change, whatever the step to climate change, as I discussed, that will be the solution. So long lasting light bulbs are a bright idea because there will be having less impact. So that is one method. So any step. Similarly, if you dive, don't touch. So whatever the tourism etc., whatever you can talk about, sustainable tourism practices. Sustainable tourism practices. If you do dive, don't touch. Then choose sustainable seafood. Overfishing, stop them. Stop overfishing. Then next one, save water. The less water you use, the less runoff and wastewater that eventually find their ways back into the ocean. So less runoff, more runoff means what? More pollution. More pollution means more sedimentation in the ocean, opaqueness. So save, conserve water around the coastal areas. Volunteer. Volunteer in local beach or reef cleanups, where you can go to the coast, where you can try to protect your watershed by what you do, by removing extent of pollution etc. I have studied a story about an area in Mumbai. What they have done is, a famous lawyer over there, he is very much fascinated about oceans. For 2 consecutive years, he has done pollution kind of changes etc., where so much amount of waste has been reduced. So volunteer can be, has been done. The next one, practice safe boating. So once again, this is part of sustainable boating activities etc. What happens is, anchor in sandy areas away from coral and sea grasses, so that the anchor can chain do not drag on nearby corals. So imagine, as part of scuba diving, you are taking away the what you say, you are taking away a boat towards a coral area, and your anchor of a ship should be in such a way that it is not disturbing the coral. Otherwise, why are you, how do you, what is the base of tourism for a shipping here? Tourism. Why this tourism is increasing? Because everyone is fond of scuba diving. But in terms of scuba diving itself, you are destroying the coral reef. So the very need for them, the economic need, is turning into a disaster. So what you can do? Practice safe boating, so that anchorage is not in a coral area. Then prevent chemical pollution. This is what, this, don't send chemicals into our waterways. Then be a marine debris crusader. Whatever the waste you have generated, Make it sure that if you are taking a water bottle, you are not throwing into the ocean. And whenever if you are going into an ocean, if you are able to some amount of collect waste, you can collect it. Recently, plastic pollution is increasing either in the coral reefs or in the or even in the Everest. There is so much amount of plastic pollution. Then educate yourself about coral reefs that create support. So these are all the methods through which you can try to protect it. I hope you are understanding the content how I am trying to provide. These things are good. Then other points which I can try to remember. One of the point, decarbonized shipping. Decarbonize, that means less carbon based economy. Less carbon economy or decarbon economy is nothing but less carbon economy, prevention of climate change. Then renewable energy, ocean based renewable energy, which is also by renewable, also less fossil fuels, less climate change. Then protecting mangroves and salt marshes so that the pollution, so if this is land and this is water, you will find mangroves usually around here. What do they do? The runoff, if mangroves are there, they will provide less pollution to the oceanic water, thereby coral reefs can survive. Then use of modern knowledge. For example, heat resistant corals. I told you just now, heat resistant corals. Can you develop them in terms of your laboratories and try to experiment in a certain area? If climate change is a reality, if global warming is a reality, how can you provide heat resist? Can you develop heat resistant corals? Just think. If you can develop and if technology provides a solution, definitely you can also go through it. That is one method. So other solutions which I have identified here. Solutions are protecting the future must transcend social, economic, and cultural boundaries. That is social, economic, and cultural. See, economic, all the tourism industry are a product of solutions, are a product of economic nature itself. They are benefiting from coral reefs in terms of tourism. So they should get solutions from economic nature. Similarly, social, people, the kind of communities which are surviving in a certain area, they are entirely dependent on corals. They can have social needs also. So in that way, we can say what you can do. You can stop unplanned coastal development. Halting unplanned coastal development is one solution. You can promote sustainable fishing. I have discussed this. Providing opportunities for ecotourism. Yes, use this word, ecotourism, to help conserve corals. Then there is a need to minimize the use of chemically enhanced fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides, and herbicides which are non-degradable and harm corals. So whichever are not harming and degrading the corals, you can use that variety of chemicals. So there's some keywords here: ecotourism, decarbonized shipping, etc. Try to remember these words while you are writing your mains answer. These words will be extremely crucial. Then harmful industrial waste must be treated before being disposed of. I discussed that in solution itself as part of problems. Then water pollution should be avoided wherever possible by not dumping chemicals or oils in water bodies. Is that you can do. Then taking all possible measures to prevent action that worsen global warming, and since climate change is the greatest global threat to coral reefs. Ultimately, whatever the solutions are, one of the significant problem for coral reefs is climate change. So if you take about prevention of pollution, what about climate change? On all these measures you have to act. Climate change is global act, and whereas pollution prevention is a local act. Global, local. Yes. Yes, some previous year questions which were asked. Yes, go through this question. 1 minute. We'll try to answer it. Please study the options and try to give the solutions in the chat section. I'm watching. Yes. Let's go through the answers. First option, consider the following statements. Most of the world's corals are in tropical waters only. Yes, that answer is statement 1 is correct or wrong. Definitely it is correct. Why? As now I have seen in the distribution I have clearly shown it to you. Then second point, more than one third of the world's coral reefs. So one third of the world's coral reefs are located in the territories of Australia, Indonesia, and Philippines. Maybe, as of now, in the first understanding you might get maybe. Then coral reefs host far more of number of animal phyla than those hosted by tropical rainforest. So these are, I told you, these have more biodiversity. So one is correct. So if one is correct, what have you done? You have only eliminated B. So option B is eliminated. So you are confused between A, B, D now. Within A, B, D, etc. Coral reefs host far number of animal phyla. Yes, that is correct. Now C and D. Now you have to get C and D. More than one third of the corals are located in the territories of Australia, Indonesia, and Philippines. See, Australia, Great Barrier Reef. That itself is a huge area. Then Indonesia, Philippines. Definitely one third are located within this area. So 2 is correct. So if 2 is correct, you are left with A and D only. Option A and D. 3 is also correct. Automatically statement D. So answer is D. Yes. Second set question. Which of the following have coral reefs? Andaman Nicobar Islands, Gulf of Kutch, Gulf of Mannar. Very, very easy question. Andaman Nicobar Islands, yes. Kutch, yes. Mannar, yes. So 1, 2, 3, yes. Option A. Sundarbans, mangroves, no. So these are the previous year questions. I hope you have understood how questions are asked. See, one thing, whatever the topics I am discussing, immediately I am also giving the previous year questions. Because of this approach, what happens is you will understand how questions are asked. Once you understand how questions are asked in UPSC, you can practice accordingly. Then let's move to the mangrove section. I hope you have understood this point. Topics. Once you understand the topic, here itself I am trying to, while I am explaining a topic, I am asking you previous year questions itself. So based on which, on a certain topic, if questions are asked in this manner, if topics are asked in this manner, that will help you in studying accordingly only. Then next one, mangroves. Yes, mangroves is one major ecosystem. As you can see in this photo, these are the mangroves. So you can see the Royal Bengal tiger. So mangroves, etc. These are mangroves. So what are mangroves? Mangroves are an example of tropical coastal vegetation which shows number of adaptations to wetland conditions. So it's an example of tropical coastal vegetation. Then one of the thing about mangroves is, as I told you, these are a transition between land and water, land to water transition. What you find is these are areas are ecotones. These ecotones like mangroves have greater productivity compared to surrounding ecosystems. Then, for a plant to survive in this environment, it must tolerate broad ranges of salinity, temperature, and moisture. As I told you, you find salinity here, you find temperature, you find moisture. Whatever the tolerance are there, you can find those things here. Thus, only a select few species may make up mangrove tree community. This is what you need to understand. Then, some of the adaptations which you find are, so please remember these words, adaptations. These are salt tolerant. So what are the salt tolerant species are called as halophytes. So consider the following statements. Mangroves are halophytes. Yes. What? Salt tolerant. They are adapted to low oxygen conditions. Why low oxygen conditions? Because more salt content. and water body structures. Water body dissolved oxygen is already generally lesser. So here what they are having the adaptation is pneumatophores. Pneumatophores are root-like structures, specialized root-like structures which stick out of the soil like straws for breathing. And these root-like structures absorb gases like nitrogen directly and store them. So nitrogen, that will be the base for proteins, amino acids. Nitrogen cycle can be part of it. So you can see the root-like structures uprooting into the air, etc. These root-like structures are called pneumatophores. What are they? Pneumatophores. Right. You can see in this photograph here. Then these lenticles are pores in the bark which also help absorb air. Then another adaptation which you have is viviparity germination. Viviparity mode of germination. Seeds germinate while being attached to the parent tree, unlike most other plants which seeds germinate in the soil. Because the soil here is of harsh environmental conditions, which is harsher, what happened? Seeds germinate within the while attaching to the parent tree, which we call viviparity mode of reproduction. Viviparity germination. Once matured, it is called propagule. It drops into the water, which transports it. This is how survival of offspring is ensured. And limiting the water loss through restriction of opening of stomata is another adaptation. Though there is a so this is another adaptation which you find, limiting the water loss. So please remember two major things: pneumatophores, which is root-like structures which you are finding which they absorb air; salt tolerant, which are called halophytes, adapted to low oxygen conditions, etc. Then viviparity mode of reproduction. These are the what are the things which you are studying. Always we are studying about something called adaptations. Please remember, always we are something about adaptations. Then distribution of mangroves. One of the significant mangroves which you find in our country are primarily in Sundarbans. So you can see Sundarbans, West Bengal, one of the major area. You can see in the extent of the green color circle, where a huge circle is drawn. So Sundarbans. Then very nearer to it, you have something called Bhitarkanika. Yes, people who might be of that area, please apologize if that spelling is, what is the pronunciation is wrong. So Bhitarkanika, Odisha, that is one area of mangroves. Then Mahanadi, one other area of mangroves. Mahanadi, Devi Mouth, then Godavari, Krishna Godavari Delta areas, one mangroves. Then Pichavaram, Muttupet mangroves in near Pondicherry, Tamil Nadu. Pichavaram mangroves, this is one variety. Then Karwar mangroves, Goa mangroves, Ratnagiri mangroves, yes, this is very important. Ratnagiri, Goa, Karwar. Then one significantly Mumbai, you will have so much amount of mangroves. Then Gulf of Kutch, significant mangroves. So this is where mangroves are available. More or less, even in Andaman, very significantly they are available. But more or less, Sundarbans, Odisha are primary importance. Tamil Nadu, Gujarat comes, Gujarat and then Tamil Nadu. This is an order. This is about the distribution which you are having. Then, what is the significance of mangroves? Significance, importance of mangroves. Once again, mangroves ecosystem significance. As I told you, divide into provisioning services, regulating services, and cultural services. You will understand automatically. Mangrove ecosystem services in terms of provisioning. What do they do? Do they provide food? Yes. How do they provide food? So many varieties of ecotone areas, varieties of food. Then water? Yes. Do they help in groundwater purification and groundwater? Yes. So water providing, they provide water, at the same time they are also purifying it. So this is a regulating service. Then there is so much amount of wood. This wood is acting like a raw material. Then there is some kind of medicinal source. medicinal source, etc., where biochemicals, ornamental resources, genetic resources, ornamental resources. You can also create ornaments, you can also create some kind of genetic resources, etc. All these are provisioning. Similarly, regulating services. So, climate regulation. Do they help flood prevention, natural hazard regulation? If there are mangroves, what happens if this is land and if these are mangrove areas? If there is some kind of a storm surge, coastal areas are prevented from inundation, that is coastal flooding. Flooding is nothing but inundation. So, coastal inundation is prevented by mangroves because they absorb so much amount of water. They act as a buffer zone for climate regulation, for natural hazards regulation, etc. So, entire coast, if there is a cyclone, if the cyclone brings so much amount of water and cyclone also brings storm surges, so when there is a cyclone, they bring huge amount of wind speed with it. They can also push the oceanic water into land. This pushing of oceanic water into land will produce coastal flooding, and coastal flooding is prevented by mangroves. This is the regulating service which they do. So this is what I say climate regulation and natural hazard regulation is. So simply they prevent from coastal flooding. Wherever mangroves are destroyed, say for example Mumbai, why Mumbai is a zone of always flooding in monsoonal areas is there is so much amount of destruction of coastal areas, etc., of mangroves in the last 30-40 years. This is why there is so much amount of flooding there. Then purification and detoxification of water. As mangroves have so much amount of sand in it, as the water percolates, there is so much amount of purification of the water which happens. Similarly, purification of air, soil can be done because wherever there is vegetation, air can be purified, soil also can be purified. Similarly, water flow can be purified, fertility can be increasing because soil erosion will be reduced, pollination will increase, pests and disease regulation also will happen because pollination indirectly will help in maintenance of more genetic diversity of insects and all these things, and there is more pest and disease regulation. Then cultural services. So these are the centers for recreation and tourism. They might be used for information, for education and research. They might be used for spiritual purposes, aesthetic purpose, inspiration for the arts, aesthetic. They might be using as information for education and research, spiritual, religious experience, cultural identifications, and some people who go into the forests, if they enjoy this, their mental well-being and health. So if you like tourism, if you go there, there is so much amount of mental well-being which can be done. Then there is some sort of supporting services also, like ecosystem process maintenance, life cycle maintenance, biodiversity maintenance and protection. Biodiversity maintenance and protection. So these are the mangrove ecosystem services. Then similarly, threats. What threats do you find here in a mangrove, etc.? Once again, you see the words here. Coastal development. Because mangroves are located near the coastal areas, wherever there is more coastal development, say for example Mumbai, urbanization drives mangroves loss and degradation, human population density in coastal region 3 times higher than global average. Right? So this is what they are trying to say. Coastal development is one of the significant driver of mangrove loss. Example, you can see Mumbai. Then climate change. So this is coastal development. Then climate change. Air temperature and rainfall regimes influence global mangrove distribution. Abrupt changes in sea level are a primary cause of local and regional extinctions. Because there is climate change, there are certain areas where sea level has increased and sea level where it is decreased. This also have a negative impact on mangroves. This is what we are discussing as part of climate change. Then mangrove loss. How much mangrove you have lost? Almost 35% of equivalent between the areas of as per a conducted study conducted between 1980 and 2000. The extent of loss is more than 4 times higher than overall global forest loss. Then pollution. Mangroves pollution, etc., which can be increased, because of which, etc., sediments and solid waste and oil spill can increase, and whereby the roots can be severely affected. Similarly, aquaculture, land use change. As there is more than half of mangrove losses globally because of shrimp culture. Aquaculture is nothing but cultivation of different varieties of fishes, shrimps, etc. So if this aquaculture is practiced by removing the ecosystem services, what happened is there is so much amount of mangrove land use conversion for aquaculture. Similarly, mangroves are also converted into agriculture. So the land which is meant for land use is, what is the word? Yes, please remember this word, very, very important. Land use changes. Land use changes. If the land which is supposed to be meant for mangroves, you have changed it for urbanization. You have changed it for aquaculture. You have changed it for agriculture. You have changed it for forestry. All these things are threats to mangroves. As you can see, logging. Logging can cause altered species composition, fragmentation, and total clearance of mangrove forest. So, mangrove forest, logging is nothing but deforestation. So, land use change is done for deforestation. Similarly, land use change is done for agriculture. See, conversion to rice paddy is responsible for 88% of mangrove loss in Myanmar. See, as per a WWF Worldwide Fund for Nature, there is an NGO, and similarly IUCN is an NGO. As per them, they have studied this and they have told that rice paddy cultivation is responsible for almost 90% loss of mangroves in Myanmar. Similarly for aquaculture. So whatever the things, the reason is land use change. This is causing significant threat. I think now solutions. I hope you can get back the solutions from this threat itself. Coastal development. Prevent coastal development where you are having land use changes. So once again, restore the mangroves by preventing coastal development in certain areas of where there is ecological loss. Similarly, take steps for climate change reduction. Take steps to prevention of pollution. Take steps to restoration of land use which is meant for deforestation of agriculture and for aquaculture. Automatically land use threat will be reduced and mangroves will be replenished. This is how we can bring back the solutions of mangroves. This is how mangroves are. I hope you have understood. I hope my methods of preparation is helpful to you. Please comment any doubts, comment section whichever you are there, and please tell your friends also to watch and to how to approach the subject of ecology so that they also get immensely benefited from my course. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Before that, etc., please don't forget to hit the bell icon and please subscribe it, etc., and use my code VE10 to get around 10% discount in the Unacademy subscription. Before that, subscribe to the platform of Let's Crack UPSC CSE English in YouTube, and while you are subscribing in the Unacademy, please use this code to get 10% discount. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.